Hi, I'm Alison from Mini First Aid Berkshire, and today I'm going to be talking to you about what Mini First Aid does, also why first aid is important, and giving you some first aid advice and some tips as well. Basically, Mini First Aid started about 6 years ago, and our founder, Kate, was looking for an accessible class. Obviously, having a newborn baby, she wanted to do one that was short enough that she could take her baby with her too. Obviously there wasn't a lot around then, so she has put together Mini First Aid. It's a really relaxed and informal class. It's to provide that knowledge for a situation that may happen, any medical emergency, whether it be big or small. We are really relaxed and informal. We offer a 2-hour class to give that knowledge and confidence for those first few minutes in a first aid situation, because that can make all the difference, and it could be really easy steps you're taking. First aid is a really vital skill to have. Obviously, we hope we never have to give first aid, but we never know when we may have to do it. So having first aid knowledge is really important, especially when you are a parent as well, because your children are reliant on you. When they're a newborn baby, you're their eyes, their ears, their everything. So having some first aid knowledge just for those just in case moments can make all the difference. We run a relaxed and informal class, and we give you knowledge on more of the serious first aid things or some of the more everyday things that might occur. Children are accident prone, so things do happen. We cover from CPR to choking to head bumps, burns, bleeds, meningitis awareness and febrile seizures. The class covers from a newborn baby up to a child of puberty age, which is about 12 to 13, so it covers that wide age range and is accessible to anyone in the family. So whether a grandparent's going to look after them or it's for yourselves, having that information can be really important. Basically, first aid, it's knowing what to do in those first few minutes. So it could just be a few steps you're taking to make them comfortable or to help a situation before calling for help, or it might be that you're dealing with the whole situation at home. Any situation can be different, but it's knowing how to deal with what's happening in that situation as well. Being a parent myself, I understand the worries and the fear factors of anything happening to your child. We don't want anything to happen to them. We don't want them to be ill or poorly. So we don't want to get into that panic stage. By having that first aid knowledge, if something does happen, obviously I can help and make the situation better in those first few minutes. So by getting some first aid training, you can know what to do in that situation rather than panic and have no idea what you're dealing with. Some good first aid advice is to have a first aid kit. You might have one already, or you may have a few first aid items around. I have quite a few. I have one in the house, one in the car, and one in my everyday bag. That is purely because I have 2 boys. They are very adventurous and quite accident prone, so things do happen, so first aid items are needed. Some key items I would say are quite useful are things like plasters, dressing pads, and wipes to clean up those cuts and grazes. Keeping things in a handy first aid kit as well, so you can take it out and about with you, is useful. And just to give you an idea of some of those items, plasters, hypoallergenic or sensitive. Children have more sensitive skin than we do, so it just means you avoid any reactions to elastoplastin plasters. And with cleaning cuts and grazes, think of it as being more gentle. With a child, we don't want them crying any more than they need to be crying. We want to be nice and delicate with them. Sometimes when they fall over, they're absolutely fine and they don't cry. Other times it's like maybe their arm or their leg has fallen off. But we want to make sure we're dealing with that situation as gently and as calmly as we can do. So keeping it to alcohol-free or sting-free cleansing wipes keeps that nice and gentle for them. Bandages and dressing pads are good as well, because if it's bigger than a plaster, we can pop one of those on. And I always say a good set of scissors in your first aid kit. So these ones are called tough cut scissors. They need to be strong enough to cut off that clothing in an emergency. If you think something's happened, so a burn or a bleed, that clothing's getting in the way, how are we going to get it off? With these scissors, we can cut through it. They need to be strong enough to cut through clothing. They can also cut through a seatbelt as well. So if you have that kit in the car, if anything unfortunate happens and you can't get them out the car seat, we can cut through the seatbelt, we can replace it at a later date. So these are strong enough to cut through material and seatbelts as well. So they're called tough cut scissors, also rounded off for safety. So if you are cutting close to skin, you're not going to scratch someone as well. So a really good pair of scissors. Safety pins are always a handy one in a first aid kit. what you can use with these is you can use your everyday items as well that's in your bag. If you have a suspected broken arm, you can make a sling. You can use clothing. You can fold up a t-shirt or jumper that they are wearing and you can put a safety pin in. You've got a makeshift sling. You're not using a great deal of first aid items, just those safety pins there. So that's quite a handy thing to think about, what you have in your bag that you can use in a first aid situation. And a burn gel sachet or a couple of sachets, just in case. We quite like to go out for cups of coffees with little ones. It's a social event, you know, get to meet other mums, go for a coffee. Accidents do happen involving burns, so a burn gel is a handy sachet, cools the area, relieves the burn, starts the healing process. Good for when you're out and about and you don't have water, because ideally we want running water in a burn situation. So a few handy items you can put in your first aid kit to carry around with you for those just in case moments. The other thing I would say is quite good is something cold to go in the fridge, a bump pad. These are good for when they fall down and bang their knee, they bang their head, you've got swelling that you need to reduce. So something cold in the fridge, it relieves it for them, it makes them feel better as well. So thinking about some first aid items that could be useful for you that you could have around the house. Also where you keep it as well. Everything we keep is together in an easy, accessible place. So if you do get someone to look after your children, you can point out the first aid cupboard so they're not looking around the house for these items, wasting precious minutes. It's all together, it's all accessible. So just thinking of a few first aid items if you have them or you don't have them, what could be quite handy to carry around with you, because children are accident prone and they are going to fall over and get cuts and grazes. So just being able to deal with those situations quickly and efficiently is quite useful as well. So first aid items, I would say, are quite an important thing to have. Another thing that worries people with babies is overheating them or not having them warm enough, so temperatures. One of the things we teach in our class is about a febrile seizure. So these are quite common. 1 in 20 babies and children can suffer with a febrile seizure. And just to give you an idea of what it is, it can also be known as a convulsion or a fit. So basically in this situation, what has happened is that baby's temperature has skyrocketed, it's risen. It's gone above 38 degrees. So high temperature is classed as 38 degrees. When that temperature goes really high, sometimes the baby could have a seizure, so they could start to shake or they could go stiff. So if you were to witness one, obviously what I've just explained to you does sound very scary, but what we need to do is we need to start getting that temperature down. What we want to do is assess where the baby is or the child. So if they are, say, on the floor or in the cot, we just want to make sure that they are safe. If they are safe, we leave them where they are. We don't want to rush in and be picking them up and moving them. We want to leave them to have that seizure. What we can be doing is obviously we want to get on the phone to 999. We want to get help to us as soon as we can to assess why this is happening and what is going on. But while we're doing that, we can get doors and windows open. We can start to cool them down. So we want to bring that temperature back down again. Once doors and windows are open and baby is nice and safe, we just want to observe them. So we want to make sure to see how long it's going on for. It shouldn't go on for longer than 5 minutes, but 5 minutes in any situation can seem like a really long time. So while we're observing them, we're on the phone, we're explaining the situation. Once the seizure has finished, we want to strip them down. So we want to remove the clothing so that the cool air is hitting the body, so that temperature is going down. We want to check their response levels, so we want to see if they are awake or not. So we do a tap on the foot to see the response there, or you can gently pinch their earlobes. This will cause them quick reaction because it will get them to cry out. So it will cause a tiny bit of pain, but at this point we want to see if they're responsive. Baby could be responsive anyway, but they might be very groggy. So they could be very tired, they've used a lot of energy. So what I would do is I'd put them in a safer position. So we would take all the clothing off and then we would put them in the recovery position, which is on their side with the head lower than the bottom. Make sure you're just not holding them really close to you, so your body heat and their body heat is keeping that temperature rising. Keep them a bit away from you. They've got no clothes on as well. Head is lower than the bottom, just in case if they do need to be sick, it can drain away safely. We're waiting for help to arrive, so we're not wondering what's happened, why it's happened to baby. They're going to be taken off, they're going to find out what is going on. It's usually down to an underlying illness, so something that you're not going to be looking for. That baby's temperature has risen, they've had a seizure to alert to you that something isn't right. Types of illnesses that can cause a seizure are things like an ear infection, a urine infection, tonsillitis, or it can be a symptom for meningitis. So things that we can't physically see, that temperature is that temperature and that seizure is the first alert to it for you. They're going off to hospital, so they're going to do all the checks for you there, find out what is going on, and then give you all the relevant feedback or an action plan as to what needs to be done following on from it. It's usually just medication to help fight any infection they have, and then if they feel you have a specific action plan to follow, you will be advised of that there. Like I said before, they are very common. 1 in 20 babies and children can suffer with these, and the reason being is the part of the brain that regulates the body temperature doesn't fully develop till about the age of 5. So once that temperature goes up, they find it very hard to bring it back down on their own easily. There are some really good things you can do to keep the temperature nice and regulated of baby. So it's recommended that the nursery is ideally 16 to 20 degrees. There are so many good products out there that you can get now to give you that indication. So baby monitors have it inbuilt on them. You can get grow eggs that light up different colours. So there's lots of things that can give you that reading so you feel comfortable, baby's in a nice, comfortable temperature. When you put them to sleep, what layers you're going to put them in. Put them down in lighter layers because we can always add to those layers if they feel a bit cool. Ways we check for those temperatures when they are asleep is we pop our hands on their chest. If that's nice and warm, they are fine. They don't need any more layers. If we touch fingers and noses, their outer extremities, they're always going to be colder. So we go for that hand on the chest. Once babies get a bit older, if they start to roll over and sleep on tummies, it's not recommended at a younger age. We do hand on the back or the back of the neck. If that's nice and warm, again, they're fine. They don't need those extra layers. So just be mindful of how many layers you're putting on them, making sure that they're not overheating. It's advised to take hats off inside as well because we need to keep that head uncovered because that's where the heat escapes from the head. So we want to keep that temperature nice and regulated too. And keeping an eye on temperatures, taking them regularly. If you think baby is becoming unwell or feels a bit warm, taking that temperature to see where it's sitting on so we know if we can keep an eye on it, if we need to medicate, if it's getting too high, or we need to keep an eye on them if they're coming under the weather. Temperatures, to check, you can get a thermometer. There are loads of thermometers out there, so do your research, get one that you're happy with. Digital give really quick, accurate readings within seconds. A normal temperature is 36.5. A high temperature is classed as 38 degrees and above. So I would say take baby's resting temperature, see what it sits at normally, and then you can see if your baby's spiking a temperature or if they've just got a slight raise in it. It's not that big a temperature. Keeping an eye on temperatures, don't rush to medicate straight away. Some situations, children can feel a bit warm, but they're absolutely fine. They're full of energy, they're eating, they're drinking. What is happening here is temperature is actually trying to fight off that infection. Viruses like to sit in a temperature below 37. If that temperature is high, that body is fighting to kick them out. So if that temperature is high and your child is fit and well, so they're eating, drinking, they're running around, or they're quite happy, just refrain from giving medication too early on. If they are, streaming, they're full of cold, they look like they're in, a lot of pain with it, then we medicate as and when we need to. So it's just looking at those temperatures, not over-layering them, but keeping an eye on that temperature. Having those few first items can be really useful. Just to finish off explaining what mini first aid was about, if you do want to attend a class, we hold them in the hub at the Natural Baby Shower. It's a practical hands-on class, but it's really relaxed and informal, so babies can come along. If you want to do it before they're born, so when you're an expectant parent, or wait until baby is here, the baby can come with you. It's really relaxed and informal, so we encourage you to come and learn that essential first aid. Everyone who attends receives a booklet as well, so after those 2 hours it might seem that you've had lots of information that you're not going to be able to retain or refer back to. It's all in a booklet, so you get it all to refer back to refresh yourself, but it's just to give you that confidence and knowledge for the just in case moments.